Anubis scared everybody he came face to face with, and for good reason. He was not a regular dog, and the vet had noticed it the moment he and his owner, Jason, walked through the door. He called the police on them immediately. Jason was just sitting in the waiting room, completely unaware of what was about to happen. But the police were about to make him regret ever buying this dog. Jason's first instinct was to get his dog, Anubis, and make a run for it. He still did not understand why the vet had called the police, but he did not want to risk his beloved dog getting taken away from him. However, it was already too late for that. Before he managed to make his way out of the vet's office, the police had already arrived, and there was nowhere Jason could go now. He did not want to just give up Anubis to them without a fight, but when they started to explain themselves, Jason's demeanor changed. It all made sense now. Anubis was not just any ordinary dog. Asterisk, how could I possibly have missed this for so long? Asterisk. But why did the vet call the police on Jason and Anubis? What was wrong with the dog, and could Jason accept giving him up? Jason hadn't planned on buying a dog that day, but the moment he locked eyes with Anubis, he couldn't look away. The look lasted only a moment before the strange dog, with its yellowish eyes and sharply pointed ears, shifted his attention back toward the wall of the pen. Jason found himself moving closer, even though he actually felt slightly afraid of the dog. But there was just something about him. Jason knew he was taking the dog home for two reasons. The first was that he had already mentally named the big black dog Anubis. The second was that the guy selling the dogs in the corner of the farmer's market didn't look like he cared for the animals particularly well. The dog Jason was specifically interested in had only come in yesterday. The seller grunted something about how everyone else thought the dog looked too mean and said he would probably end up getting handed over to animal control to be put down if no one bought him. Hearing that news, Jason knew he couldn't leave the dog behind. Part of him feared that the man, who seemed less than trustworthy, would charge a price that Jason couldn't afford. Thankfully, this wasn't the case. He just seemed eager to get rid of the strange dog. In his gut, Jason knew that he should probably first discuss bringing a dog into the house with his wife, Monica, particularly when it was such a dangerous-looking dog, and the fact that he and Monica had a set of 4-year-old twins. Who knew how this eerie black beast would react to children? Time was running short as the seller was beginning to pack up for the day. Jason couldn't bear the idea of Anubis being sent to a shelter and killed, so he made a decision. Jason knew his wife well enough to know that she would say no to this dog if he asked her. Jason paid the shady seller and led the very quiet and well-behaved Anubis to his truck. The strange dog was very calm throughout the whole drive home, only staring quietly out of the window. When they arrived, Jason realized he hadn't yet heard Anubis make a single sound. Jason had never seen a dog behave like this before. Had Anubis perhaps undergone some training in his previous life? Perhaps he'd been a police or military dog who had failed to make the cut. This kind of composure couldn't be normal, right? Jason could feel the angry stare of his wife, Monica, coming through the window when he stepped and walked onto the porch with Anubis. Luckily, his two sons, Melvin and Marty, reached the door sooner than she did. Jason held his breath, tightening his grip on the leash. Would Anubis suddenly become aggressive? Monica rushed up behind the twins, fear clear on her face. But Anubis, despite his terrifying appearance, took it all calmly in his stride. Melvin and Marty started jumping with joy, saying that they now had the coolest-looking dog ever, with Anubis taking this all in ever so calmly. Monica could hardly be that mad. But Monica was actually very mad. How could he have made such a decision without asking her? What had he been thinking, bringing home a dog like that out of nowhere to be around their children? Why would he buy a dog from a random man at a farmer's market? Once Monica had said everything she needed to say, Jason apologized for not talking to her. Then he explained the whole situation. Once she heard about how Anubis would have been on his way to a kill shelter if not for Jason, Monica's anger lessened. She admitted that despite her first impression, she did quite like Anubis. She just worried about having him around the twins, who could be quite boisterous and loud. Jason agreed that supervising the twins whenever they were around Anubis would be a good idea for a while. But Anubis would end up deterring a lot more than potential burglars. Much to Jason and Monica's relief, Anubis quickly proved himself to be a perfectly capable family dog. Nothing seemed to bother him, and as a bonus, his intimidating demeanor also made him a very good guard dog. While Monica and Jason found this a bit uncomfortable, it again did not seem to bother Anubis at all. When either Jason or Monica would walk Anubis through the park, other dog owners, joggers, or just anybody present would give them a wide berth, trying to keep a safe distance. Anubis had been with Jason, Monica, and the twins for almost a month now, and his stoic, quiet personality had remained the same from the very first day. It worried Jordan how the animal seemed almost completely emotionless. Nothing could get him down or excited. The appointment was booked for 3 days later. In the time before the appointment, Jason decided to do some research of his own. Jason ended up booking an appointment at the vet to get Anubis thoroughly checked out. But this simple checkup would turn into an ordeal that Jason could never have predicted. He was still unsure even about what kind of breed the dog actually was, let alone what might be wrong with him. Jason had some ideas, but none seemed to completely match. Probably only the vet could help him find out the truth about Anubis. After several hours of research, the twins really wanted to come with Jason and Anubis to the vet, as they thought they could help keep him calm. But Jason decided to leave them home just in case there was actually something wrong with the dog. He did not want his children to get freaked out by that. Besides, it was not like Anubis needed anybody to keep him calm. Jason was convinced that not even the cold and scary office of the vet could scare this animal. But it would end up scaring Jason himself a lot more than he could have ever anticipated. When he arrived at the vet that afternoon, it was very busy in the waiting room. Some appointments before him had taken a lot longer than anticipated, and there had even been an emergency situation that day. So Jason and Anubis had to wait a while, and they were getting a lot of looks. Some people put their pets back in their cages or grabbed a tighter hold of the leash. It was clear to Jason that they were afraid of his dog. This was something he, of course, was used to by now, but it was the first time it would actually come back to bite him. An employee of the vet's office walked up to Jason, and with a bit of shame clearly on her face, she asked Jason if he and Anubis could wait outside for their appointment. Some of the other people in the waiting room had complained about feeling unsafe. Jason looked down at the ever-so-calm Anubis and took a deep breath of disappointment. This dog would not hurt a fly unprovoked, and he knew it. But he would probably forever be mistrusted just because of the way he looked. The other people in the room avoided making eye contact with Jason, and even though he wasn't happy about it, he took Anubis outside to wait for their appointment. But Jason could have never predicted the consequences of this at the time. After being outside for only a couple of minutes, a man in a long coat walked past the pair but halted in his step when he glanced at Anubis. He asked Jason if this was his dog, and when he agreed, the man kneeled next to the scary-looking black beast. Unlike most other people who saw Anubis, this man seemed to be completely unafraid of the dog's looks. He explained that he was the senior veterinarian who was just coming back from his break. He was in a rush for the next appointment, but something about Anubis motivated him to still stop for a second. He did not want to elaborate on what exactly caught his attention, but he did promise Jason that he would speed up his appointment if he also allowed him to switch the vet he made the appointment with to himself. He seemed strangely eager about this. Jason found this a bit odd, but seeing as it was fairly cold outside, and he had no idea how much longer they would have to wait for their original appointment, he agreed. The senior vet walked into the building. Satisfied, Jason was called in just 10 minutes later. He felt like he got a lot of angry looks from other people who obviously realized that he had been allowed to cut in line before them, but he did not care. These people and their pathetic prejudice could suck it. It was up to him. Jason walked Anubis into the office, where the senior vet was already waiting for him, suited up in the appropriate clothing. He looked almost like he was ready to perform surgery or something, while this was only meant to be a consultation. While Jason was explaining to the vet what was worrying him about Anubis and why he had come here for help, the vet was mostly just preoccupied with checking the dog up and down. He barely even seemed to listen to what Jason was saying. Halfway through the conversation, the vet suddenly interrupted Jason and told him that he needed to take care of something really quick. He marched through the side door of the office, closing it behind him and leaving a baffled Jason in the office. Jason thought he could hear some talking on the other side of the door, but he could not make out what was being said. The conversation only lasted about 2 minutes, and when he didn't hear talking anymore, Jason expected the vet to come back any second, but he didn't. Jason waited and waited until nearly 15 more minutes had passed. He was getting impatient as hell. As he had no idea what was going on, he tried the door handles and found out that they were locked. He started knocking on the door, banging almost, calling for anybody to come and get him. When he kept getting no response, he started getting angry. Why were they treating him like this? Did it have something to do with Anubis? He started to see red, and in a flash of rage, he kicked in the door through which the vet had left about 20 minutes before. The vet was standing in the other room, just waiting, calm as could be, even though his door had just gotten kicked in. Jason demanded an explanation, and after the vet took a quick look at his watch, he was actually willing to inform Jason of what was happening. He told him that he had just called the police on him and Anubis, and that they could be here any second. Jason was stunned. He wanted to know why, but the vet told him that the police would probably do a better job at explaining it than he could. Jason was stunned. What possible reason could this vet have to call the police on his innocent dog? He was still full of adrenaline from kicking in the door, and in his mind, the police were probably going to take Anubis away from him, and he was not going to let this happen. With Anubis following close behind, he sprinted to the other door of the room he had just entered and tried to get out of the building as fast as he humanly could. But it was already too late, as the police were outside the building and stopped him in his tracks. It was obvious that they wanted the leash from Anubis and to take him away, as they also had an animal control vehicle with them. But Jason was not going to give Anubis up without a fight. He stood in front of him and screamed that if they wanted him, they would have to go through him. While this was happening, one of the police officers slowly stepped forward, trying to make gestures with his hands, indicating that he wanted to calm the situation down. He was willing to give Jason an explanation. That was the least they owed him. The police officer started by explaining that the senior vet had recognized Anubis, and when he was sure that he was dealing with the right dog, which he was after the examination, he had called the police to inform them of his find, and they had come right away. The animal that had been brought from that shady cellar was not just any ordinary Mexican hairless dog. He was actually owned by a religious leader in Mexico City who was nationally known for preaching the words and culture of the Aztecs. You see, this breed of dog is actually very important in that religion, as legends told that this kind of dog guided the dead to the underworld, a hellish proposition for any religious mortal man. The religious leader actually used Anubis, whose actual name was Zolo, to calm relatives of the recently deceased during funerals. Led by the religious leader, Zolo would sit by his side, completely unmoved by the dead and the ceremony, which was supposed to show that God was not interested in taking the deceased's soul to the underworld. That is why the dog was always so calm. He was trained not to react, but a couple of months ago, Zolo was actually stolen from the religious leader by non-believers. The dog was expected to have been put down by them, but somehow it had apparently ended up with a shady seller, from whom Jason ended up buying it. Jason was stunned by all this, but the proof was all there, and it also explained all the questions he had about his dog. He knew that he had to hand the dog over so that it could be returned to its rightful owner and help many more people, but he still found it very difficult to say goodbye to his dog. In the end, he, of course, did give Zolo up, and Zolo was returned to his owner in Mexico. Luckily, the religious leader was actually a fairly wealthy man and gave Jason a handsome reward for his part in getting Zolo back to him. Jason and his family ended up getting a new dog, but this time they made sure that it came with the appropriate paperwork and that all of the family approved before the decision was made. From time to time, Jason still thinks about Zolo, but he knows that he made the right decision. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.